Well, welcome aboard. Is it Aug?
Yeah, that'll work.
All right. Well, hey, I welcome you to Late Night in the Midlands, and I thank you for spending some time with us and sharing this information with us.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. It's been a long time coming.
Yeah, well, I don't know exactly where you'd like to start, but I'd certainly like to. I guess the best place to start is with your background. Where did all of this start, or do you want to give us a little, I don't know, teaser on where we're going tonight? I know where we're going, but the listeners certainly may not have any idea. So I guess start from the beginning.
I can talk about the bases a little bit. I'm pretty nervous here, but it's coming along.
Well, listen, I understand it, and even me, when I go on other shows, I get a little nervous too. Don't worry about it. I'm not here to crucify you or judge you. I'm just here to hear your story and share it with the listeners. I mean, I don't bring people on my show to, point the finger at them or anything like that. I mean, I'm interested. I know that these programs existed, and I'm all ears.
Yeah, that's good. That'll get you the truth. Some of the names, I think Mockingjay, Mockingbird, Bluebeam, Project Talon, MK Ultra, Monarch Mind Control. We went into genetic modifications in the Nazis' Uberman program, Project Camelot, and Bluebeam with basically creating a New World invasion or a false invasion. All these things to manipulate consciousness. It started, I guess I was 9 years old. Mm-hmm. I believe they explained that Project Talent through the school system and possibly other things. I'm not sure if my family was involved. 9 years old, I guess I was given the opportunity to, get in a way mentored by a secret society member. He showed me many things, and I'm not sure really how it got into torture and MK Ultra, but I do know that what we call mind control and mind washing, brainwashing, is what they do. It turned out that the secret society member was a member of one of the elite families. So all the families go through this starting at the age of 6. Once they're past that age, they're no longer looked at as a child. Everything has to be done as if it were an adult. So they use Monarch mind control, which is multiple forms of controlling a person, basically through the consciousness. And that, honestly, it starts with sensory deprivation, overload of sensory senses, to the point where it's the beginning of torture, of discomforting situations, sounds, sights, sensations. Then, I don't know if you reject that. I believe the natural step that they go, because it's all planned, is basically sexual torture and manipulation of the consciousness through these base desires that they basically, what they do is they map out in these, not religious rituals, but almost as if it's a ceremonial, a show, a game, and they're mapped out for each person's consciousness or personality with their, what you could call their insecurities and their fears and weaknesses, or whatever they pull out of it, and they create, in a way, these nightmare scenarios to tangle the person's consciousness up and ultimately to fracture it into many pieces. And from there, they capture the pieces that fractured, and based upon the personality of the person, they use the various alters for various tasks. When a person fractures their consciousness from these events, the personality, the alters, each alter will have a different specific set of memories and a worldview. None of them will be, overlapped. They'll be separate. And so depending on which one they target, they can create alters for any situation. This extended from this monarch mind control, from the elite, from just wealthy royal families to everything, to children, celebrity politicians, which is honestly, that's all I really need to say. The celebrity and the politicians, you have media control, you have political control. At that point, you can control what people think, you control their imaginations, you control what they're going to do, what they're going to think.
Right. Well, let's go back just for a minute here, and because I know you've got a lot to tell us, and I don't know if we'll even get it all out in one show. No. We might not. So we might. I'll certainly pursue this. So, why? I guess let's start with why do you think, and you kind of touched on it really quick in the beginning, but why do you think that you were selected? What made you a selection? Is it random? Do you think, or is there something more to it?
At first, I thought it was random, but that's not how it works. I was specifically selected. I believe they kind of pick people who are, in a way, maybe more gullible, to the point where they're more imaginative. Because basically, I remember times being in school one or two times, and I was in third, fourth grade, so this is back there, and individuals from some think tank group or something came in with these goggles that go on your head, and I remember this. I'm not supposed to remember it, but I had this all explained, and I remembered it on my own. I talked to them. The goggles first showed Disney footage in fast succession, to the point where it's basically a Disney programming device. And if the child disassociates, a certain change will be noticed in the person, which is probably a handler, coming through these schools doing that. I apparently disassociated. I'm sorry, I got a message.
Oh, it's okay.
I apparently disassociated to such a high degree that they have use for that, and basically it hypnotized me. The Disney symbols, it was almost like a hologram technology in the goggles, and this is like the 90s, so it was like the 3D goggles that are coming out today. It was something like that, and it was literally Disney characters and symbols, and the star in front of the shows that come out, the movies, the logo. It was all these things wrapped up into this almost psychedelic visual trip, and apparently I was hypnotized rather quickly, and so I'm assuming that was at least one of the deals, one of the call signs, I guess, however you want to call it. But there were a lot of other things, because basically these members of society, they're in any business you can imagine. Basically my dentists, doctors, and orthodontists, they were all one way or another involved. So once I was targeted through something like that, it was from there. It's easy.
So it kind of makes sense to me with the whole school thing, because I remember when I was in school, you'd have certain I don't know, you call them teachers or what, who would come to the class and take certain kids for special programs, whether it be, I don't know, you'd hear sometimes, well, the smart kids, they kind of separate them for whatever reasons, or certain kids with certain traits. And it might have been like school selection then.
Right, that's what it is. Apparently that's Project Talent, and it's the Brain Trust and all these think tank, Tavistock, all these groups coming around, and that is like a fishnet for these people, and the real defining feature is just that we're basically able to be hypnotized and drawn up into the system. And then I believe also, because of, I was curious about these sacred messages and knowledge and symbols and everything that they used, and it wasn't the hypnotism that did that. I saw the connection between the ancient gnosis and the BS that they were basically bringing on me there. So it's almost as if they can get a person through that, and the person is then interested, as strange as that sounds, in the knowledge aspect of it. They take that and foster it until it becomes, the person grows into, and that knowledge grows into something that's useful and powerful for that person. But throughout the whole process, nobody, grows, and then they're strong and smart, and they go off in the world. They use these people for, like puppets. They use them for society. It's always a plan. It's just always a plan, and there are apparently what you could call elders that have the power and the technology to live essentially a very long time, and the whole thing is mapped out, every little detail, on these huge systems that I don't really even know how to describe, but they use them.
So, and now you said that like doctors and dentists are involved too. Now I have to wonder, like if I have, say, a toothache, I'd kind of pick my dentist. Now, how do they work that? How do they get in? I mean, how do they get everybody on the same team like that? I mean, because you would pick your doctor, at least you think you're picking them, right?
Right. With that, it's nothing to worry about. You'd really have to kind of do something to these people to get followed and this, that, and the other. There are a lot of issues with gang stalking, with people wondering why it's happening, and that's basically another version of the same issue, because now they don't need to get people, they don't need to screen you. They have basically devices and systems set up for instance, the computer, I'll get to the doctors, but the computer, everything that's on there is being categorized and recorded. So now they don't need to screen whose childhood was one way or the other. They have profiles on everybody that connects to that. On top of that, there's other things that use mind sensing technology, scalar technology, which is a little bit deeper and it's being propped up now. With the how they get all these people involved, it's both with their consent, without their consent, and with their knowledge and without their knowledge. Anyone that's involved in one of these groups, they can basically be called up, even if it's just like a lower level secret society member or anything like that. They can be called up and brought into an initiation, which will be specifically laden, riddled with programming that will utilize this person essentially as an altar, but it's not through torture. At that point, say he needed to, not like the next client that came in whose name was this. That could be subconsciously put into his programming. And then you have the people that are aware of it that get, in a way get off on it, kind of see it in their eyes. And it's not just somebody either subconsciously through that or even through a higher up, through the head doctor or maybe even an insurance company telling them to lay off it and they don't really know that that's going on. The other people then, they get in on it and it's like a game to them. It's like a game of controlling the population, and they believe that the people that aren't aware of this aren't really awake enough to be considered human. And that's kind of rough.
I've run into those people. So I guess at one point, hypnotizing and picking them in school, like you said, was probably the way to go. And now with the technology where it's at now, like you said, everybody's got their profiles and this and that. Everything about them is digital now. And so they probably got other ways of doing it. But how exactly, how would they get people, like, get you hypnotized? And I'm asking because you've got my interest here. And once they get you hypnotized, did you remember? Did they tell you they were going to hypnotize you? How did that go? So
when the first few times it would happen, say like the first one in school or the first few times back, basically in these underground bases, It's exactly as you would think. First few times you can resist. You can resist as long as you want. But the more you resist, they find out the reason in you, the belief system that propels you, that rope, that light at the end of the tunnel. That's half of it, if not 90% of it. Finding out a profile of what this person believes so they can take the system, the facts, and the design of the show or the scenario they create and collide that belief system, collide the two most weakest parts of it and rip it apart. So now at that point, if somebody believes in God or somebody's gonna help them or whatever. I believe in God, but they really turn people against each other in these ways and rip a belief system apart. So they'll target that with, say, spiritual and religious programming. How the programming is around now, and I could remember at first, but once it gets past these levels and they break your conscience, at that point your brain shuts it out. It doesn't want to know. You can't go back to normal life and wake up or come home and then everything's cool and know that even if you remember that day. Apparently, this is what I was having trouble with, as they program you to forget as soon as you go to sleep, to the point where you'll dream dreams that are similar to that event, and when you wake up, you believe it was a dream. It's programmed into you.
But help me understand. Like when they're doing this, it's not. When I think of hypnotism, I'm thinking that somebody's got this little watch and they're swinging it in front of your eyes. But you're not talking about that type of hypnotize, right?
It's the same thing, but when it's that, tender, and apparently always the person has to accept that they can be hypnotized, accept that they're, the other person is in control through these symbols. But say you're sitting there in a chair and he's on stage doing that, that's fine. You can reject. But say you're strapped down and they're putting drugs into you, and you have a multi-faceted monitor strapped to your head, and the flashing symbols are going and going and going, and as well your ears are plugged with these headphones. At that point, resistance is literally finding something so subtle within you that it's hard to describe what happens. It's hard to describe.
I see, because my next question was going to be, now why wouldn't a kid tell mom and dad? But you're saying that by the time you get back to your so-called reality, you were made to forget all of this. Is that it?
Not only made to forget, but what I'm saying is, in that chair, in that situation, they'll turn the person into a vegetable, into a baby, no matter how old they are. And it's that the brain will forget, because at that point it's like a break in memory and consciousness. What they do is they induce an artificial nervous breakdown, artificial schizophrenic break, and they use all these chemicals to do that. And just traumatization alone, enough pain will cause the brain to view that as a dream, a bad accident, a bone break, anything like that. The memory will go quick. You can feel the pain there, but if it's too much, it kind of crunches together. They focus on that effect that the brain can produce, and they use that, and it induces crazy states of temporal manipulation, to the point where really they you could feel like you were there for hours or days. I mean, they take people there for hours, but it feels like it's much longer, to the point where when these glitches happen in the brain, the memory, it automatically gets categorized as something that can't be real, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Well, now, nowadays, of course, they use big pharma. I'm sure that a lot of these drugs they've got these kids on. I mean, every other kid is on some kind of drug because ADHD or what have you. So that's probably, being used now, right? I mean, they claim that this program was shut down. And, of course, I don't believe that, because they've got so many more advances on the brain now. I mean, they know how to... I've seen demonstrations where, one guy would put on a cap or like a little strap on his head, and he'd be able to control another guy's body with his brain waves. I mean, so, they probably learned all this from these programs.
You're exactly right. They got it from Tesla. They have that technology now, but there's no contact needed. You can just stand in a circle and they beam it at you. They found that out in the 70s, actually, through Montauk, which they found out through radio waves at I think 400 to 425 hertz, low frequencies and some ultra high frequencies induce emotional states. You can induce any state of emotion in a person, in a brain. I'm assuming in anything with the central nervous system in a brain. Maybe any mammalian, anything. You can experience it, they can create it. The brainwashing, you're correct. It's in the medicine, these are all control systems. And then all you have to do is look at, the TV, the media, the school material, even the book material that are coming out with these weird scenarios and everything. To really get to the bottom of it, just look outside in society and ask yourself if this is a population of people that are aware of themselves and aware of how the brain can be manipulated through these things. And if they're talking about the latest trends, that means it's working. That means it's entirely working.
So now they took you from your home. I mean, tell me a little bit about your upbringing. I mean, you were taken away. I mean, did you live with your parents? I mean, did they know? Were they in on this? I mean,
they got the brunt end of the deal. So I don't want to go too deep into that, but they weren't approving of it. But the way things went down, they couldn't do anything. And when basically things kind of the stuff hit the fan, they kind of got a few treatments, if you will. So at that point, you can't tell them anything because they'll shut it out automatically. First, it was physical meetings, just literally meetings at a certain location. I hate to say it, but the first one was my parents had they got called to go to a bank over a potential loan or something like that. The bank basically, bullshitted them, but got them to come out there. It was one of these agencies. And I don't know how to say it, but they used the mind machine technology to call me over there, and I got out my parents' car because the whole situation was I'm sitting in the car, they're going inside for a few minutes. For some reason, I walk out, something pulls me over there. I walk out across the parking lot, and there's a police car and a couple unmarked, and the person that I now know to be was my handler, and he worked, now I know, 2010 I was informed, he worked in the, I guess I can say it, the Majestic 12 projects with extraterrestrial contact as well as mind control and containment.
I see.
So from there, once they did that, and they got my permission to continue, which I didn't know what I was getting into, which that was what the police was there for, because I did it in the car. I said, okay, I want to know what's going on. And so it's on camera that they have my permission, and I'm treated as an adult from that point on. I think I was 9 years old, 10 years old. And
Yeah,
so after that, it was through technology, which is hard to stomach.
I see. Now, I was just going to ask you now about what time frame are we talking? Like what year? I mean, I'm not asking your age.
That was 99.
99. And they claim that they ended this program in the 70s. Boy.
Nah.
Yeah, you beg to differ, don't you?
I guess I do.
Yeah. So then they were. You mentioned torture that's happened, underground bases and all that. So they actually bring you into some of these underground bases now. Is that correct?
So physically, I met him that first time, and there was communication on the internet. Listen to this, because those were physical times. I'll explain the technology consciousness transfer that will have you guessing for a while. But the first time I actually had a hypnotized whatever, I was on a computer, and I believe somebody hacked it. And it began flashing. It began flashing like you would see in what I later saw in the MK Ultra project, the bases with the goggles and all that. The screen itself began flashing. I must have clicked something in a program. I let the program in or whatever, and I believe that was literally like a personalization. I don't know. They began targeting me through the school, and then from that point on, in the house and in the computer, in anything. It was the strangest thing, but they used technology to influence the mind. And after that point, though, I didn't remember that meeting. I didn't remember the school event. I didn't remember any of that. I'm sure they asked me what I knew. What do you remember about us? Okay, and then they wiped that all out. And from there, I guess about probably that year, a few months later, and there was actually more meetings, physical meetings than just that first one. But they were later down the line, especially 2010. This is all. They did an official unlocking. They unrepressed the people's memories. I don't know why. But after that, I didn't remember anything. And then what happens was they used 0-point devices. And apparently with Telsian waves, which are electromagnetic, electric, and radio waves, those are the waves that the body emits through consciousness. Those are life waves, consciousness waves. Somehow, something happens during REM sleep, REM sleep. And when the brain goes into that mode, I don't know why, they can grab the consciousness, probably with the triangulation of beams, and at that point they can translocate it into a compatible biological entity, a body. And this was from what I assume was at one point genetic material taken from me, one of those meetings where they had a clone body, a physically grown clone body that they would put me into, that they would put apparently a lot of people. But it was through that.
And I want to get into this more too. And I know that people who might be listening, some people might be saying, "What?" But here's the thing. I'm having you on because I know that everything that you're telling me, these things are going on. They have gone on. And so I just want to tell you, I don't detest, and I do believe you. So, I want to make it clear in the chat. All right. I had to put the chat room down for right now because it was getting distracting. And here's the thing. I've got a really good guest on tonight who's got a hell of a lot of important stuff to tell us, and I need to pay attention. So I can't deal with hecklers tonight. So I'll go back to the chat when I'm ready to take questions from there. And if you want to call in, you can call in after the next break. We'll be taking a break in about somewhere around 20 minutes, and then you can call in after that if you've got a question, or you can private message me, and I'll get the questions in the chat room afterwards. All right, so back to these. I'm really interested in the cloning, so we can go back to the bases and such. But so cloning now. How do they? I always wondered this about the cloning. I mean, they obviously, if they're not created by, I guess, some would say God, right. Where's the soul energy? Where do they get that from to run these things, or are they kind of robotic?
They explained this to me. I gathered some of it from just being there, but so there's another person talking about this. I'll probably shout out his name at the later on in the show. Okay. But They all they need is a few cells now. At first, what did they say? I think they needed bone marrow and white blood cells, or they needed something more. But now they can take, or I think it's blood. Now they can take any tissue, 2 cells of any tissue, and they agitate it in a certain way, and it literally accelerates the growth until the whole body is there. It's a big issue. The whole the whole thing, yeah, Indigo. The whole thing is about, do these beings have souls, or are they robotic? Basically, there's duplication cloning. That is when the cells are taken, and then instead of basically an accelerated growth pattern goes out, where it goes from the cells to multiplications and into a, zygote, and then basically a fetus is formed, and then an adult fetus basically is formed, and that grows into an adult body. That's replication. Duplication, and these are actually all old versions now. Duplication is when they take the cells and create a fetus, and it's a baby fetus, and they grow that. I'm not sure if it's the same amount of time. It might be about 3 to 6 months, they say. They grow it in saline water, like amniotic sac fluid, and that would be a baby that would apparently have its own soul, but it would be shared with the real person. And there's always genetic flaws to the point where it's not the same. It's not a copy machine. It's basically a copy machine. It's not the same. It grows too fast, so there is always genetic errors, or there are always flaws. The DNA has telomeres, which as they replicate, the telomeres get shortened, and these are like countdown for, mortality. It's kind of like built into the DNA, and there's more on that about who built this in and at what time in our history. But when the accelerated growth process happens, the telomeres shorten. As that happens, the organs apparently don't live as long. Basically, they die quicker. Now they have also other tech to deal with that, to make a living person, live through almost anything. But the problem is the DNA. If the DNA is that complex, which it is, and there are errors popping up because of that, you can't stop the degradation, the decay. You can't stop it. They basically have to jump from body to body doing that, which is why this is all coming out. It's flawed. And another problem is that they weren't doing it for duplication. They didn't want to go back into a baby's body. These were the elite that got thousands of scientists to perform this. They didn't want to go into a baby's body. They wanted to go into an adult body and continue to live life. So they figured out that they could get that brain mapping. You see these brain mapping, MRI, new diffuse scanning, imaging MRI, building neural networks of the brain based upon water molecules moving through the neurons. That's old. That's very old. They had that. And they used these supercomputers to process basically a 4-dimensional holographic chip that contains the entire memory and personality pattern of the individual. Of course, there are flaws. The first versions of this, it was such a bad copy of the individual that the personality that came through was like it was like they were possessed. It was like they were a poor copy of themselves. And what it really comes down to is that what makes us whole keeps us in line. It keeps us reasonable. It's actually the higher brain. There are certain functions that the higher brain will kick on when, something embarrassing might happen, and we avoid doing that. Apparently, that is a learned element. It's the soul, if you will. It's learned through trial and error of being a kid and figuring it out and, getting disciplined and learning how to control yourself. The brains that they create through this do not have that, so it's literally as if the consciousness of the person is there, but the personality is not. It's not the same. It's almost very, very, unnerving. But those people, they're not the elite doing this, all of it, all of them, but it's an elite, wealthy individual that will have that done, so they're not cutting it short anytime soon. They're keeping themselves around, and so now we have these types of people on this planet.
So if I can interrupt here for a minute. So
Sure.
basically, because we hear these CEOs and people from Google and all these other big companies who constantly say they're putting billions of dollars into figuring out how to extend life and become immortal. And I always said they're doing it for themselves, not for us. But so I've read scientific reports and journals from the UK that indicates this technology that you're talking about right now. I mean, they are talking about it now that they can load your thoughts and all that stuff onto a small chip, and so just for anyone who thinks this is crazy stuff, it may sound crazy, but that's because you've been watching Fox News. This stuff is really going on. But okay, so go ahead. So they put these chips in, and then what? So the clone body actually gets chipped, and then they upload, like, say, your personality, your traits into this new body?
Well, if the person is, the original body is dead, then yes, the only consciousness that will be existing, the only container for that will be one of these clones, and it'll be through the chip. So at that point, that individual will stay like that. If it's a person, a living body, apparently they can take the consciousness without the chip. Maybe at this point, maybe they needed the chip at first, I'm not sure, but they can take the consciousness of a person without the chip and locate it into a chipped clone.
Oh, kind of like a thumb drive, how we might take something from one computer on this thumb drive and then put it into another computer, and once it's loaded in the computer, we could take the thumb drive back out.
So this is the other unnerving part. It is all ran on quantum supercomputers that can calculate not as much as the brain, because even they're stumped that the brain is the most powerful supercomputer. But it's ran by a supercomputer, so the chip doesn't even actually contain the consciousness. It's not. It serves it to create an uplink with a huge, I don't know where they keep the computer, whether it's in the sky in a UFO or whatever it is, a gravitic drive craft, but it's actually a huge neural network that's created and controlled by this AI system that runs it. So without that system, the chips would all just fall out. They just fall over. All the people would just turn off.
And this AI system, now I've heard about that. Alfred Weber, he's talked about that, and I've had another guest on who's talked about the AI. But I mean, I want the truth about it, and I think sometimes these guys add their own spins on it. And but this AI, I mean, this obviously exists. I've seen the reports on that too, and what it's doing is gathering as much information from everywhere it can, and eventually, it probably already is smarter than everybody else, right?
This is what the future of humanity is going to come down to: whether we can manage ourselves or whether we give our power away to a system that manages us, because that system, I know you see it here now, that system becomes the system that the AI manages, and it's actually already making decisions on its own. The other part about the chip and the micro hard drive, well, that's the other thing, that at this point everybody's consciousness, the real consciousness, is up wherever that server is, all together in this device. It's basically like a soul container from one of these alternative religions or something. So that's not normal.
So then, I mean, going back to selection, so there's just a selected bunch of people. So it doesn't mean that everybody, I mean, they probably have, obviously they've got information on everybody, but they weed out who they want and who they don't want.
The only people that get that high are either people basically like me that were being used for their sensitivities, their creativity, whatever it was, or the wealthy and the royal elite that have these bloodlines and they have this wealth. And honestly, the only real thing that a person has to do is be able to go through their Monarch mind control torture programs, because again, that's just their baseline for reality. Once they're 6 years old, they start going through it, and now they're doing it to the politicians and celebrities. So if they can go through that, the whole point of that is it kind of takes your mind away. If they go through that, they're going to be used in society in some way. They're going to be some person somewhere making decisions, controlling things, making a lot of money. Through that willingness to go into that process, they move up in what you could call the ranks. But that process, again, it's mostly just suffering, causing suffering, and enjoying causing suffering in others.
Mm-hmm. And so, why do you think you're able to talk about it now? And I won't say nothing's happening to you, because I don't know that. But why are you being allowed to talk about this? And are there going to be, some kind of consequences for you talking about this?
I was cleared to talk about it. They kicked my ass, but it was through mental stuff and these torture programs. And they don't give you scars if you're in a clone, if you want to understand that. So later on, after the unlocking of 2010, I kind of lost my mind and went apeshit. I gained a few injuries at that point, banging my body up. So I'm beat up, and they can increase heart rate and things like that, and cause little problems. Basically, the real reason to get down to it is that none of what I'm saying is the actual threat to humanity, and they know that, and they told me that. And they know it's a threat to all of us.
And do they expect, and they probably do they expect that most people are going to just look at this and say, oh, another one of them?
Well, here's the deal. Yes and no. Because as soon as they say, there's no people that accept it and can take it, well, they're going to see more. And the more people that ignore this is one of the things that they believe. They're very spiritual, if you will, if you can call it that. They believe that if the people aren't made aware of what they're doing, that they don't truly have the right to do it. And that say they caused, a huge catastrophe or death of millions or hundreds, whatever, they believe that God or the universe might, throw negative energy against them, might take them out. So all of why you see everything in the media basically just being talked about blatantly, shown through symbols, shown through what we call science fiction. It's because they're asking you to put two and two together, basically so they don't have to go through with it. If people choose to ignore it at that point, they believe they have spiritual right, in essence, to abuse these people. It's almost religious. It is religious.
So they want people to figure it out so that they don't have to go through with it. And of course I would ask the obvious question, well, why do they have to go through with it?
Well, these events, these technological advancements, they didn't end there. They didn't begin there either.
I mean, you might not know that. I mean, but I'm just saying, it's like, that sounds like the crazy guy, not you, but them. Sounds like the crazy guy in the basement who says, I hate to have to do this to you, and I wish I didn't have to. And it's like, well, no, you really don't have to do this to me. You know?
100% correct, and I was writing it down earlier. I wanted to go back into the AI and how it's connected to the UFO as a computer, because the UFOs, I'll just say that the engines become an AI in a computer system because they're particle accelerators, and quantum computers. And but the thing is with your last statement, you have to understand the mind of a psychopath, someone completely disconnected to the emotion and the emotional spectrum of what we call humans, what we call society, family, normal ins and outs and flows. When you get down to it, the psychopath can't control themselves. They can't stop. It's almost like a vampire situation. They need this to continue feeding their psychopathic ways. The real reason is that it got out of hand, even for them, and now their eliteness is literally being threatened at this point, as is all of humanity's, by the technology that's coming out. Where it goes into, I want to try and think about where I should go from there, but where it goes into is breakaway civilizations. From these events, literally a few years ago with the 0-point tech, they didn't stop there with mind manipulation, this, that, and the other. I'm sure you've heard of the Philadelphia experiment. Yeah, experiment. They explained all of this to me. They even shed a tear when I kept, begging the question of what happened to the guys that jumped off the ship and the people that exploded into flames and stuff. A lot of crazy stuff apparently happened. But they formed a bottleneck around the ship and transported it in space and time. What happens is all the individuals in that moved through a hyper space state where their bodies converted to what you would call thought or light. Those that didn't know this was going to happen, and you have to guide yourself as the ship reformed. Yes, those that weren't aware of this on a I guess a higher level, they drifted, their consciousness drifted into the walls, the hull, anything, or somebody was going through an emotional transformation, which is the kinds of things that happen in this hyper-accelerated state, which is basically your DNA starts to unlock. And some people blew up into flames. Some people merged with the ship. So it was a big process, but the thing is, they figured out if you make an electromagnetic bottleneck, a vortex basically, you can literally shrink basically any space, into any other space. I don't know how to really describe it, but if they have that frequency that they're attributing it to, and they set up another generator and a whole nother bottleneck, a whole nother system on another place, they can literally teleport objects from place to place. That continued to the point where they realized they could then move through time. This is temporal manipulation. Incredible. And I don't know everything about it, but what happened was the breakaway civilization formed when they got a hold of this technology. And this is actually World War II, so it's a little confusing because factions formed between the U.S. government, the Nazis, who actually basically won the war, and basically what became of these people who began using this technology. Their DNA started to mutate from the accelerated gravitation waves that these particle accelerator engines created. And through merging with these crafts, they not only became one consciousness, but because their total collective consciousness level was essentially lower than that of a human, they devolved into subspecies of human beings.
Incredible. Well, listen, Aug, we're going to hold off right there, and I want to take a break, and then you and I will come back. You got about a good 5-6 minutes, so sit back and relax for a moment. We're going to take this break, and we'll come back and talk some more. Folks, I'll pop the chat back up here in just a minute so I can get your any questions you have. I've got a ton of questions myself to go here. This is all very fascinating, and I could tell already we're not going to get it all out in one show, so there will be others, that's for sure. Wow. That's all I could say is wow, to go through this kind of stuff. It's like fantasy for some of you. I know there's some people listening right now. He mentioned psychopaths, and I'm not being funny. I have dealt with real psychopaths. Some of you who follow this show know some of who I'm talking about. Really. I mean, they feed on what they do to you. I mean, they, like he said, they can't stop. They just can't stop. Kind of like, how I feel about my show. I can't stop. Well, they're like totally, the same way, only they're evil. They can't stop, folks. We'll be back in just a few moments. This is Late Night in the Midlands. I'm Michael Vera. Don't go anywhere, folks. We'll be right back. Us on K98 Talk. They run us. You have to go to their site to see their schedule. But K98 Talk, one of our affiliates, SHR Media, and WAFR 87.5 FM in Wareham, Massachusetts. So we thank you as well. And really soon, with your help, you go to our GoFundMe, and you'll help get us on for at least 8 shows we're looking to do on the big 50,000 watt station there in Arizona. We're actually thinking about hitting 2 big markets. And we need your help to do it, though. And, of course, can you imagine? And then I have a guest like I have tonight on, and these people who have been listening to, I don't know, Sean Hannity and all that stuff, I mean, they would hear this and, start making them think, right? Maybe they'll actually get off of the coast-to-coast dating site, and they'll go run over and actually research some of this stuff and see for themselves that, it's not just fairy tales and fairy dust here. By the way, folks, go on over, become a late nighter, and you can help keep us on the air. Donate. We definitely appreciate that. That keeps us going too. 2 separate donations. The one on our website, the donate button we have, that is to keep us on the air here, all right? But we've got this GoFundMe thing going also, which we decided to do because we want to hit a couple of the big markets, folks. So it's looking good right now, so keep it up. We want to reach our goal before we go and sign away anything and go do this. So, well, we ain't signing nothing away, but we're certainly going to pull in a whole bunch of people. We're gonna hook them. So, anyways, folks, let's get back to it. My guest, AT, I call him for short. That's actually how he was initialing his emails to me. So I kind of got used to just saying AT. And well, he's with us tonight, and he has given one. He's given one hell of a presentation on all of this. You know, for somebody who's nervous, he's doing a damn good job. He's gotten my interest, and apparently he's got a lot of yours too. So, folks, if you want to call in, you may do so. I ask, here's my rule. No F-bombs. I like to keep it clean because we want everyone to listen. We want everyone to listen. And you start doing things like that, talking like that, and you do throw some people off. Even if you think them getting thrown off by it is stupid, it still throws them off. And I don't want to deprive anybody of an education. Everybody deserves an education. So we keep it good here so that everybody, they have no reason to not be educated and learn these things, honestly. So that's my rule, and please keep yourself muted until I bring you on if you do call in, all right? And all right, so let's get back to it with my guest, Aug. And all right, so we're back, and now I've got, of course, questions from listeners, but we'll get to that. What about... And I'm not asking this because I'm like challenging you or anything, so please don't get that impression. But what about like references? Like, do you remember names, people, just things that you can point to? I mean, you know, these things that's happened to you. I mean, do you remember looking around? Do you remember seeing people? Do you remember seeing ETs involved? I mean, what do you remember seeing around you when these things would happen?
That's another touchy subject. Basically, we thank you, Indigo. When certain rituals are, a lot of it's from childhood. So when a lot of the things are happening as a kid, one of the main, it's kind of effed up, but one of the main things they do is they hypnotize the children so that no matter what's happening in the situation, no matter how much clothes or clothes aren't there, the faces are blurry. Of course, in 2010, they unlocked the memory. They kicked out all the programming, and apparently around 25-30 it happens anyway. The programming breaks. At that point, I honestly gained every memory that I thought I already had, because I already knew something was going on. Around 18, there were some experiences where, and it was going on since forever, but around 16 they laid off because they were building me up for an 18-year-old, like a gauntlet that they create for people. Uh-huh. And that honestly started my break, if you will. But at 2010, they basically met with me physically and did that, and I regained all the memories. From that, it's hard. References are difficult because it's all around us. It's all everywhere. MK Ultras came out, it was legal. They at least you could see, on Wikipedia or whatever, they were taking people, possibly children, and drugging them with LSD and Of course, I've told people that before, and they go, hey, well, they were getting them high. Yeah, imagine being strapped down and having a vial of it shoved into your veins to the point where you don't know where you are anymore, and then they're putting on weird, religious kabuki masks and almost demonic rituals and things like that. It's not very fun.
I wouldn't imagine it is. It had to have been horrifying.
Well, it fractures the consciousness by getting as horrifying as it can be, and then it's just fine. And that's actually what they do. They look for the break. They look for the screaming, the panicking to stop, and then the person's fine. And what happens is that person, the real personality, went to the back burner, and there's an altar there. Now, that's just fine with all that stuff, and the brain has literally rerouted neurons so that there is no pain being felt. And then the references are everywhere. There's studies, there's science coming out about it, there's the secret societies that have been doing this for years. The manipulation, you can see how the system's rigged, where the money goes, how these false flags, these black op events, people disappear. That's the type of stuff you kind of got to look for, because you're not going to get anybody to just come out and tell you. All these things happen, why is it 3 miles underground and underground base? Because you're not going to be able to get anybody in there to take a picture or something like that. So every aspect of it is pretty much like that. But now that I have all the memories, I didn't want to say this before, but everyone you talk about, and everyone talks about, everyone of that political system, oftentimes the religious systems, and you can go back through all of the religious systems to see what kind of rituals these religions were born out of. They're all there. They're all there. I've spoken to them face to face. Half of them that you see on TV, if not 90% of them, were at the 2010 awakening. And the reason I'm allowed to do it is because they want me to. They another part that I skipped over before was how that you got to see the personality of a psychopath, the psychology of it. Psychopaths, think of the serial killers. They want to get caught. They want people to be shocked. They want people to lose their mind seeing what they've been doing. For them, this is also playing into that aspect of it. It's like a desire.
Well, they are psychopaths if that's what they want, because exactly. These people in this world, believe me, if they all lose their minds, I would not want to be those who want this. So, I mean, there's people in this world who will eat them alive. I mean,
well, they have protections for that, and that is one of the things that they worry. They worry that before we get to any place, any way where all this can be settled, however that will be, that people will wake up and it will happen in a way that is essentially similar to anyone going through a midlife crisis or anything like that, a child going through a traumatic experience. And if that happens with 100 million people, it could destroy that nation. If it happens with 1 billion or more people, it could destroy our civilization. They do have safeguards, and at this point, there is no way to truly go and kill them all and go to war with them and win. It's not going to be through that. It's through humanity no longer accepting a vampiric society system where you have to be told that, you're going to be forced to pick people who then extort you for cash, spend it on things that don't serve you, and lie to your face while doing it, and honestly, secretly do the craziest things that you would never believe. That is this system. That's the one we're in.
I see. And somebody had brought up, so I'll bring it up. Someone had brought up Donald Marshall in the chat, and I'm going to say this. Him and I had bumped heads a while back. I don't have anything against the guy, but we bumped heads a while back. He was actually going to come on the show and talk about some of this stuff. And I don't know, he didn't like some things that I asked, I guess, before he came on. And, well, we kind of rubbed each other wrong. And I don't know, he went off. He had a lot to say about me. And so, I had a few things to say about him, and that's where it's been. So, I mean, if I know that you had mentioned. Well, I was going to say you were going to mention him, too. And you're welcome to do so. I mean, I don't know the guy. Personally, I just know that his temper flared off pretty quick, and so did mine, and it is what it is. But yeah. All
right, so he's going through it right now. You're not going to be able to get close to somebody who's going through this shit. That's how it works. Yeah. He's a good man. He's a good person. He's a good individual. He's not God. He's not whatever. But he's here to help. He was given the same situation. Talk out about this. Whatever's going to happen is going to happen, but we got to talk out about it, because if nobody does, nothing is going to come of it other than the worst possible reality, and we'll get to that. He's a good dude. He was down there. We have our own history. I was tortured with him in the same situation where his picture was taken for the album of the cover of the Megadeth album. So he's going to be mad at me now. He got mad at me too. He's getting. Before I went through everything that I did at the end of it, I was the same. I wouldn't let anyone in. I wouldn't talk to anybody that gave me anything. I would send it right back at them. And honestly, that's powerful. That's strong. That's you standing out above the rest. Basically, we're both in this because, as well as politicians, you can name them, and I've seen them and met with them and honestly done strange things with them. All of them. So on top of that, it's the celebrities that they're using. It became like the movies, like Selfless or The Island. They use the clones of the celebrities, and now it's not their minds they're after, like it was maybe others or power.
Well, let me ask this really quick. Like a big celebrity like Michael Jackson, he dies apparently, right? So you would wonder why they wouldn't quickly pull in a clone for him. I mean, because they could make.
They did.
They did. Well, I mean, but why wouldn't he be public and say, "Oh, nope, he didn't die. He's still here"?
Oh, they killed him. Well, I can't say that. He was gonna do that, and I don't know why it came out the way he did. Because usually they have time manipulation and tribal tech, so they can see what's gonna happen. But oftentimes you'll see, and a lot of times they're playing with people to, get these people to do that. Maybe they're gonna die anyway, and then what happens is they go into another society where they're living in these clones. That's part of the breakaway society. Is our dead humans, celebrities, and things like that. And he said he was going on a tour. He was going to tell the truth, this, that, and the other. And then his doctor gives him an accidental overdose. So clearly there's something not right about that, but it just comes down to how he was in that stage and what had really happened to him over the years, because he changed forms, if you will, more than once. And to basically come to a point here, this is the important part. I'm here because the celebrities as well as the elite, and there's really no government, it's just the elite. The government that we think is the government came out there and we're having shots and drinks. They don't govern anything. They asked us to come out and tell. They're in a situation where the celebrities are essentially used as entertainment, if you will, as well as the children are, but it's wrapped into this Monarch control system, so they can say, oh, we're making them stronger, we're breaking them down to build them up, and et cetera, this, that, and the other. The celebrities sign the deal, and the deal with the devil is not with the devil, it's with a person, with a company, a family, and a group. And at that point, the deal is that they can get, these people have unlimited money, so they can give them any pleasures, anything that they can imagine, any type of media control, fame. They can create that out of thin air. They even have stuff that can make you sing like any person you've ever heard on the spot.
Now, do they? I mean, can this happen to people who don't even realize it's happening? And if so, I mean, how do you know?
Yes and no, and it goes down to there's actually a Navy document leaked, and it talks about the voice to mind, voice to skull tech, mind manipulation, emotional manipulation, thought implementation, dream control, even health, heartbeat. They can influence all these things. So what you have to do is become so in tune with your body and your mind within your natural patterns, and as well trace the desires and motives of your personality to see why you're doing these things. You have to basically psychoanalyze yourself and see where these artificial or foreign patterns begin to come in. And when it comes down to it, I can tell when, for the most part, something is happening. To recap, the celebrities helped us get to where we are, along with certain members of the elite, and the Nazi breakaway scientists, and this civilization that became of the Vrilya society. And they want us to tell people because they really can't do anything else about it. They can't get out. And on top of that, they're taken every night to the point where it's not even like a deal. I asked them this. I told them this. All the celebrities as well. I said all the politicians you can name. Well, all the celebrities you can name, all of them. The top ones. Well, guess what? They have the ones that died in the olden times. Yeah, they have those too. They have the old royalty. They have even apparently ancient Egypt blood reincarnated. But they get used, and as well as the children down there, and so that's why this is happening now. Eventually, it's going to create a chasm. It already did, and it's going to be so difficult for humanity's psyche to work out of it that it'll be like a collective virus, and that's what happened to essentially get this way. But this is basically the time where our society is going to split into those who accept this vampiric control system, and they know that there are others who are waking up. And they have to let them wake up and go to the good system, the good earth, it'll be here. And they have to also, if people aren't woken up, apparently according to a contract they have with they claim are extraterrestrial beings that basically manipulate them to do everything that they're doing, that they have to eradicate fear from humanity or not let humanity leave the planet. Because they'll be held responsible if people are seen as incapable of handling this technology and spreading what, just like how the rest of the world sees America as crazy, we're not doing it. We're not crazy. It's the control system. Well, the rest of the races think humans are crazy, but it's not us. It's the control system. It's a virus. And so they're acting as gatekeepers to the beyond, to the what they call immortality, 0-point tech. They can make any object, any food, any change in reality. They can create it with devices. They can four-dimensionally print objects into reality, you know.
That is, and this is insane. I mean, this is, I mean, some serious biz here. I mean, how do people? What do we do about something like this? I don't know. I mean, it just sounds like there's some advanced extraterrestrial race that has technology that we couldn't even comprehend. It almost seems.
Yes, but our DNA, you could even say it's extraterrestrial, but I don't mean that like we're, you know, ETs. Our DNA has the same makeup, the same potential that theirs does. All DNA does. It's a big secret. As long as you have DNA, you're connected to the entirety of the universe, the entirety of your evolutionary spectrum, and as long as the emotions, the mentality, and the physical form, the motivations that come from that are balanced, it will advance. What happened with them is that the other race and the humans that mingled with this race, like I said before, they experienced genetic mutations from it's as if there's a device, the early Nazi Bell and all that. They described all these things and showed me them and took me on rides with them. They used some type of coil setup, an array or something like that, and super conductive liquid mercury spinning at 55 to 60,000 RPMs. So imagine 1 RPM is what we're experiencing now as far as time and space and our DNA changes and mutations. So they're in these devices that are running at 60,000 RPMs, flying around, manipulating things in society, and even using these things to go back in time to manipulate our history. So it looks like we've had this forever, when in reality it actually started in the 40s or so, which is crazy, but our timeline is merged with that. The DNA mutates at an accelerated rate, you know, imagine, for just throw a number up, 60,000 times faster than it would here. And so if they're in a vampiric state, the emotion, what I learned is an emotional element to humanity creates a trinary effect of emotion, mind, and body. If the emotions aren't there because they're vampiring, they can't create the emotions. Humanity creates it automatically. They devolved into a reptilian state which operates on that genetic spectrum of consciousness where emotions are binary to the degree of eat, sleep, have sex, or maybe even kill. And so that was their minds from this. With these devices, it became their bodies. Literally, 100% morphogenic DNA mutations to the point where they devolved into a subspecies of reptilians. And then there are those that devolved further than that. And then there are those that advanced themselves and became basically super psychic humans or super psychic other types of beings. And these reptilians are psychic as well, because all animals essentially are. But the point is that the DNA folds and unfolds, accelerates and evolves or devolves, and that by messing with these devices without having this knowledge of spirit, basically spiritual maturity in mind, they degraded and devolved themselves into these other beings. Those are the aliens.
They are. Now, what about the Greys and the Mantis? Now, people talk about seeing them a lot, especially with abductions. And so then that would lead me to this, and you could elaborate on both. So with the Greys and with these, you know, abductors, people who've been abducted, they have all these memories. And I always ask them this question, so I'll ask you too. How and can you be sure that the thoughts and the experiences that you're remembering are actual things that have happened, or maybe part of the experiment where they gave you these memories? And I'm not trying to guide you or anything. I'm just asking.
Oh, for sure. You can challenge everything. I challenged myself for 16 years until I was literally at the end of my rope, and they grabbed me and were like, "No, it is real."
And I only ask because I need to know. I just you know, is there something that, I mean, you could probably say, well, I know it's not this because, so that's why I ask.
Well, one, because it goes on too long. You know, hallucinations and these things don't recreate themselves to that degree where they're now involving this knowledge I'm learning about all around the world. And that was the big problem at first. It's just dreams, and you can ignore those. Eventually, when you're talking to, you know, celebrities and politicians, and you're experiencing events that, you know, your body doesn't even know it could experience yet, you don't just dream that up. Not having a weird tone there or anything, but what you said is perfect, because it comes down to this. I'm going to go into. I want to repeat one thing. The celebrities put it in a way enable this. They want you to ask them questions about this. They want you to bug them. Not don't bug them, but they want you to give them hints so that they can give you more hints because that's the only way they're going to be able to communicate. At this point, that's they can be whatever. The rest of it is they can create through these chips, and now through I don't think they need a chip. They can create any type of hallucination that you can walk up, talk to, and touch using these computer systems because the mind, when these computer systems react fast enough, it creates a virtual reality system like a dream state that they can control and even see on a monitor and watch that you can't tell isn't real unless you're really, really aware of the situation. And that's actually something from the secret societies that has been going on since the beginning, since just Tubal-Cain, since ancient Egypt, and it involves the earlier versions they involved crystal tech, which could allow these members to operate within the mind of the individual, within their imagination, and essentially test them through these rituals, through these initiations, and create any type of visual or tangible dream state hallucination that's as close as waking reality as the brain can make it. And they would use these to test. And so it's very, very strange when you find what the real part of this all is, because it's coded in all that illusion.
It almost sounds like the only way to get an edge on this would be an EMP. I mean...
Well, yes and no, because that will also wipe out the oil and the energy that people are using. If we go out there in the cities and we gather up 2 million people, 100,000 people, and throw them in the woods and they can just survive and ban. We don't even have to become survivalists. Think about it. We just have to get in a line and hand each other what we need as society. If we're not at that state, that would be just as devastating as a takeover, if you will.
Yeah. We
go back to the Dark Ages. Whoa. We don't want that. They don't want that. Apparently it happened 5 times. This is the 6th reset of our society because our DNA is to the point where we can handle enough information and there's enough people on the planet that can do that. Apparently, they cannot reset it again. That the species is going to go one way, and the other half of us, or 20%, whatever it's going to be, 90, don't know, is going to go another way with them.
Well, and you had mentioned how they were able to manipulate time, like time travel. Now, if they could do that, then they could go back and manipulate anything, anytime they want, can't they?
All right, so that's what happened. That's exactly what happened. That's why we're in this situation. They planned it out, and it didn't work. It threw everything off. They got what they wanted. Everybody's in control. Everybody's in control by this cultural system that was implanted thousands of years ago by the so-called reptilian beings from the sky. I'm just going to propose to you that it is a possibility that if they went back and orchestrated historic events, that what we would call culture, myth, and religion today would be these essential... the first MK Ultra psyops of humanity.
Wow.
It'd be difficult to understand it, but when you see all the pieces, it comes together. They have a breakaway civilization. With this time tech, they can create a time bubble. I could, disappear from my room, be gone for a week, come back a second later. And when that happens, if you go too far, years or something, the brain tends to crack. It doesn't work forever. But to the point where... what would you do if you had a time dimension? You got all the time in the world, you got all the genetics, you got all the people, all the money. So they populated these dimensions. So there is more than one civilization, a complete society in and around the Earth that no one knows about that is entirely running off of 0-point energy, this cloning process and these basically these supercomputers running the show. And we got to people got to be aware of it, and we got to know how it's going to affect us and how our mindsets are going to affect them and ourselves. And ultimately what it comes down to is, just as that's hard to understand, how did halfway through our civilization, or whatever you want to call it, another civilization birthed into a temporal dimension, across from that? The real confusing part is that they did go back in history, they did alter events, and these are the events that we know as history itself now. Our history is literally created in the 40s and 50s.
And I've even speculated, like, people will talk about biblical times, and I'm thinking, how do we know that, they didn't go back that far and manipulate things?
Well, that's what I'm hinting at here.
Okay.
When you hear voices in the sky, or a sky craft, a chariot of fire, or beings from the sky, and telepathy, and scalar wave devices separating, water or making fire come down. This is very, very high technology. They can come and say, look, I'm God. I made you do this. In reality, they go, haha, just playing. It was tech. It's the same situation. These beings that were doing that, I'm not going to say they are God. They can call themselves gods, but that doesn't mean anything either. They just live for a very long time. They were using very high tech. All our myths and culture are from this other dimensional way of looking at things, and the manipulations that were born out of these secret groups getting this technology and tangling up our entire history and existence into what looks like a big spider web of temporal influence.
This is really incredible because I've speculated this. I've had religious guests who have been on with me, and I mean I think they get a little upset with me because they'll talk about time travel with me, and I'll say, well, if you and I can agree that time travel is possible, then we have to look at the possibility that these dirtbags have gone back in time and manipulated everything, and they tell us there's this big deception, the big deception. You could have just stumbled on the big deception right there. I mean, and I'm not trying to shatter people's beliefs, but if you go back, like you said, you look at some of this stuff back then, and I say it over and over again, it sounds like a bunch of great technology to me. Doesn't it?
It is. It could be used for wonderful things. It's like you turn the power down to 10,000% of what it was, and we use it to make grass grow, to make vegetables grow, to clean the friggin' water, to clean the air. So here's the deal. The opposite is happening. It's because there's two factions basically fighting it out over humanity's genetics, over the future timeline that humanity's gonna make it to.
Well, let me ask. I hate to keep interrupting, but when I'm really interested like this, I have to interrupt. I'm sorry, but you said that. Now I lost my train of thought there. Oh my God! I mean, I'm so deep into this right now. It's like I've got a million questions floating around in my head.
Yep.
But you said so. They're both fighting over our genetics. My question was going to be, why are we so special? Isn't there others in the universe that they might rather have? They wouldn't have to alter anything, or no?
Yes and no, and that's another sacred, ancient, big secret about DNA and humanity and what's really going on here. Because we're at a very, very high state of evolution. Our emotion, what happened was we were jumped ahead in technology, somebody back then. Our technological and intellectual capacity is very high, but the emotional and spiritual maturity is very low. People fight each other. You put something in the street and there's a million of it in the store. People fight each other over and hurt each other's bodies to get something that does not have anything to do with that. And it's even worse if it's shoes or something like that.
Go look at a Black Friday line.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. And that is essentially a control system. But the point is that only thing that can happen from here without paying attention to this trinary spiritual, emotional, mental aspect and physical aspect is that we degrade and devolve. Whatever happened to put us here, they gave us a gift to be able to know these things and do these things to the point where imagine if just humans without this control system in place had this tech. We would be a spacefaring civilization that would basically be having a ball. That's how it would work. But it's a virus that's in us because if we don't get this out, this maturity, and there's, one person that feels emotional in a way they shouldn't be, they'll chase that as a desire and they'll pull emotion from others and it'll throw the whole spectrum of consciousness out of whack. That's also why it can't happen because we can't just be given this tech. Because we'll probably, we'll see a war or two pop out just over nothing at that point. It's maturity, spiritual maturity.
And somebody, before we hit our next break, we've got about 8 minutes before the next break, but somebody had brought up a good point. And so let's say, I won't say Alex Jones because I don't think the highest to him, but let's anybody, I don't know, myself, let's say, or somebody, pick anybody. Why wouldn't they just go back in time and say, this guy's becoming a problem with his mouth. Let's go back and let's make sure he's never born. I mean, or do they do that kind of thing?
Well, here we go. So they have these back rooms in these secret society locations, on these sites all over the world, all these places. In those rooms would be a designated area that one of these travelers would come to. They set up the secret societies throughout time. That's how they stayed ahead of the game, ahead of the economy, ahead of politics, ahead of power, and money in any form, even knowledge, every step of the time, because they had help from the future of those secret societies, which are essentially the royal elite. Now I'm losing my train of thought here.
It happened to me too. I mean, there's just so much. It's quite all right.
Okay, so that's what they were doing. Anytime you see somebody wiped out, okay, it's them. I mean, not like that, but any crazy stuff. Andrew Breitbart, he said, "I'm going to tell on Obama." He went to go get coffee or soup or whatever, died of cyanide poisoning, tripping down the sidewalk, thrown up in the street with a red face. Maybe it was arsenic. I switched them up. And then the guy that saw him disappeared, and then the mortician that found the cyanide or whatever the poison was, he disappeared. So things like that are clearly other type of influence.
Yeah, that's not coincidence. And, you get some of them out there and say, oh, what a coincidence. That's not coincidence at all. I mean, you're making some excellent points.
Here's the deal. There are a new generation of people. The reason they do that is because they believe that the protective forces of spirit they're literally protecting people. It's as if a person, you could break it down to what is obviously largely a control system, but the words fit. If a person sins, if they give in to this lower, whatever, they feel they have the right to touch this person however they want. If a person doesn't give in to that and truly only wants to help the people, no matter how badly they were broken down and made to give into it, they literally believe that they'll be killed by some event if they touch these people then. Now, what that relates to is during the 2010 awakening, I met the beings, I met the elite, I met the politicians, I met everybody that I had lived for 16 years in the tunnels and all these experiments with and were, blacked out of it. I met them all, and there's a space fleet of humans, of men. It's called Solar Warden. These are the factions that are essentially trying to figure out where humanity is going to go. On top of that, they said there were other beings, I'm not sure if they're humans, who also made this time mutation journey, and apparently once you go out of the gravitation wave of the Earth, you begin to accelerate and mutate into whatever you are. You probably become a thought or something like that. And there's beings that are protecting people. Random. Somehow, they have more technology and more power than the elite. They have more craft, more energy. I don't know how to put it. Maybe neutrino beams is a word to use. But they can stop these events from taking place even when the elite have these time travel tech and all that. So somebody is fighting for humanity.
And who we would call the elite? I look at them as really they're obviously the henchmen. They're they've taken these positions because they've been promised things or whatever, and so they're controlled by the real elite. But yeah, I get what you're saying. Some people get on my case when I say elite. You're giving them power because you're calling them elite. Well, I call him elite so everybody understands who I'm talking about. But yeah, I get it. Ryan Gable, who's a host on this network, he's sent in a question. He's on the road, so he couldn't call in. He asked me to ask you about MK Naomi.
I heard that name. I can't. If I look something up on it and I see what it is, then I'll go, oh, this was this part of the process. I heard that 2010. If you want to tell me something about it, I'll tell you exactly what it is. But at this point, I can't remember. And there was a few when this happened, and they gave me specifics like that. We can't react with violence. I slapped a lot of the politicians and the elite in their faces, literally, and I got tortured for it as a result. But I slapped them in their faces. It doesn't help. And what I'm saying is I rejected everything. They wanted me to talk for him. I said, it's just a trick, whatever, But the truth is, people have to know about this anyway. So I'm surprised that I have anything left, literally anything left. But again, the memories are there, so I can, if there's some type of, if I went through it, if I had anything to do with it, I'll know exactly where and when. And that tends to happen. Now,
what I would wonder is how many people, including myself, who knows, how many people have memories of things like that, and they think of them like, oh, I remember that dream, and it really wasn't a dream at all, and that, but they look at it that way because they would underestimate, all these things we're talking about tonight. I mean, they would think, for a lot of people, this is out of their realm of reality, out of their realm of they can't imagine it for a lot of people.
In this part of the torture process, we're conditioned to the point where now the truth is rejected. It's scary, but that's the opposite. If it's scary, it means we need to learn about it more. We need to figure out what's going on. I also wanted to say two things real quick before the break. I met my labs, military abduction is my labs. I met Solar Ward in the space fleet that honestly takes part in these events. They're time travel manipulation because they're trying to avoid a violent, panic in the people. So people get time manipulated so they don't reach that point in their life. On top of that, the celebrities also, I got to reiterate that they want you to see the signs and the hints and ask them about it. Point it out. Like, what is that? Give them the awareness that that's how it works.
You should see Madonna was on stage the other day. I seen a video. She's got a 17-year-old on stage with her and pulls the girl's blouse down and shows everything. Hey, these people are sick, basically. But go ahead.
I wouldn't say that's an accident. And as well, they may be sick, but they're trying to get caught so that. Well, here's the deal. You said the elite has an elite, and that's what it is. And they're what you would call the Anunnaki, and I believe that might even be humans that devolved into a reptilian state after thousands of years of time travel and games and manipulation. These beings use energy and frequencies to subdue the mind and the central nervous system, and they basically vampire people's consciousness energies, and they're being vampired. They take our energy, vampire it, the elite, through media, anybody, and then they take it and give it to these beings. That's how it works. It's like a draw, but that means they can't stop because they're not going to have enough energy to continue. So they have to find some way out of that. It's a big trip, because how do you get out of that?
Yeah.
It's about genetics, though.
All right, and let's take this next break, and we'll come back. We'll have close to close to an hour to go after this, so we'll get quite a bit more out, as much as we can, folks. I hate to say I'm enjoying this conversation, but I am enjoying the conversation. I'm not enjoying the fact that somebody has been tortured and abused. However, this is an education that you're being given right now. I mean, these things really happen. You may not believe some people when they tell you these things happened, but these things do happen. And so, and they have happened, and they are happening to people right now. So let's take a break, and I promise I will get to your questions in the chat room. So go ahead and private message. We'll take calls, too, after the break. 803-392-4566. Our Skype ID, LNM Radio. And Aug is my guest. He's talking about the MK Ultra program, folks, and programs like it. We'll be right back. Author Jose Collazo has released 2 books titled America's New Slavery and God. Try Non-Human Entities. Non-Human Entities supports LNM, and LNM would like you all to support them by going to visit Non-Human Entities on YouTube. That's Non-Human Entities on YouTube, or just click the banner on the LNM Radio Network website that says Non-Human Entities.
On the East Coast of the United States, from the capital city, Columbia, South Carolina, you're listening to Late Night in the Midlands with your host, Michael Vera. To talk to Michael Vera, dial 803-392-4566, or around the world on Skype. Just use Skype ID LNM Radio.
All right, folks, and this is the night shift. It don't get any nightier than this in the East Coast anyways. 9 p.m. to midnight. Anything after that is the morning, right? So we are Late Night in the Midlands. We are in the Midlands of South Carolina. when I first started this show a while back, a lot of people would write me from the UK and say, what part of the Midlands are you in? And I'm talking about South Carolina's Midlands. And anyhow, folks, get on over to LateNightInTheMidlands.com. Become a member. Be informed. Inform others. You could become a late nighter. It gets you access to our archives. It gets you access to our forum. It gets you access to our insider videos and all that good stuff. And here's the thing, people who say, oh, I had one guest who chewed me out because of our archives and because we have a locked archive, right? And she chews me out. Well, here's the thing. Here's what she should have known, and she didn't, is that when my guests ask for the link, I give them the link and I allow them to share it. So, it's not like you can't get it for free if you really wanted to be cheap about it. I mean, by becoming a late nighter, and other shows won't tell you this kind of stuff, but we do have some people who we deal with, who we allow to post to shows. Guests are one of them. But we have a couple friends on YouTube who we allow to post some of our stuff. Not all of it, but a good deal of it. They get to pick what they want to put on there and what they don't. So it's not like it's, locked up. The information, it's not. But we do provide an archive, commercial-free archive here. And we ask you that you help support us and keep us on the air. We're listener supported. That's what we are. We're with no corporations, none of that. As a matter of fact, we've got a GoFundMe going right now, so we could put up enough money to get ourselves on a 50,000 watt station, a couple of them in the country here, because they don't have the balls to take the chance on us. And so we'll put ourselves on there. Well, you'll put us on there, and we'll kick some butt. Even if it's only 8 shows we do there, we'll do them. We'll do a show just like we're doing tonight. Matter of fact, I would have this guest back. I think that millions of people need to hear this, don't you? All right, so let's get back to it. And again, if you want to call in, the number is in our chat room, LateNightInTheMidlands.com. It's on our website. You can find it. There is a chat and listen page, and many of you have found it. But there's a chat and listen page. We've got listeners from all over the place, and a lot of you don't ever even visit the chat room. So feel free to do it. I mean, I think we can handle as many as will come. So, our regulars might, they get nervous when they see crowds, but they'll get used to it. All right, so let's get back to it with my guest, Aug. Augs, I wanted to ask you quickly before I take the listener questions, what about dreams? Tell me, what connection do dreams have to this type of, and I'm going to call it abduction because that's really what they're doing to you, aren't they?
Yeah, it's false abduction and military abduction.
Yeah.
I'm going to go right after this, I guess, into what I said about Donald Marshall before, about our situation, the time travel possibilities with that, or how it happened. Because once our stories come out, they'll know time travel is real because it can't be any other way that this happened. And then I have to mention and eventually explain and talk about that some of the beings devolved further into parasitic forms, which can essentially not emotionally take over a body. They can physically take over a body, and through a proboscis that comes out of their forehead and lodge behind their eye and swirl into around their optic nerve, and we were unlocked by the same person. They call it sweating the quill and all that. It takes over the consciousness of the individual and reroutes the energy system to basically serve that of their race, whatever that race is. Mm-hmm. That's a lot of what's happening. And then I'll talk about how that happened to me. Well, that didn't happen to me, but when the album event or whatever happened with us being tortured and Donald having his picture taken, that happened to me when I was probably 11 years old. Donald says it happened to him a few months ago. He's, in his 30s at this point. Mm-hmm. I don't know how that's possible unless it's some really, really good hypnotism to the point where they put it in when I was 16 or whenever, it happened a few years ago. And now I have appearance of memories all throughout my life of this happening or knowing something happened like this as a child, because you have the hint that something's wrong. But again, the memories weren't really there until they unlocked it. But that's the point. How could I remember that it happened when I was a child? It's just very strange. But the dreams, it's all about consciousness. What they do is they create a dream for you, just like Hollywood, just like having the psychological through psychotherapy and in Freudian psychology, the elements in symbolic form, in a story, in a scene, which you could call like a movie set. And that's where they do these games, and it mimics what the subconscious does. It mimics the dream state. It mimics all of the elements that we know as a mystical dream state. It borderlines on a spiritual state and manipulation through that. They use to go into that. They use that proximity of the experience of dreams and the time flow of that. And the way that in a dream you'll bring out whatever elements your subconscious, your conscious mind, your subconscious will hand the conscious mind by whatever you consciously focus on. They use that and basically make these living dream scenarios. And it makes it difficult, but it's what we all got to do anyway, which is go into our mind, review our dreams, review our consciousness and our psyche. And ultimately what the end result of that, or the quick way of saying that, is that we have to look into our hidden unconsciousness, our psyche, the hidden psyche, which is where all the trauma is stored. And that's basically how that ties in. They use that nature of consciousness to manipulate people, to turn them into whatever they want to the alters. But we do need to go into dreams, though. We need to run through all this stuff to realize who we are anyway. So they're hiding behind our own,
I see, and everybody has, I guess once in a while has just weird dreams that make no sense, but everybody also has dreams, like I guess everyone does. I have, where things have happened in the dream and I had the pain when I woke up. I mean, like I got shot in my dreams before. And when I came to, not only was I in cold sweats, but I had pain everywhere I got shot for at least a good 4 to 5 seconds. I felt it. It's like, almost like, I don't know. It's like it was just another world. I often say that, once the mind goes to sleep, the consciousness wanders. And, and so these dreams that we have, I think they're a little more real than we give them credit for, some of them.
Yeah, if you're hinting at that, then dreams can be computer, if you will, like super processing of our subconscious of whatever happened in the day, whatever's on our minds, things like that. And then I believe this is a part they kind of let you figure out on your own, which is that dreams basically can interact in and out of time and with the different states or different bodies of knowledge, if you will. We can basically, through our subconscious, we can connect with genetic memory and the unconscious and even the collective unconscious wealth of memories and information for our race. And so when we get anything through dreams, it's 1% of that coming out. And, if we work with it more, we'll learn things through our dreams. That's how it works.
Incredible.
And again, imagine what you said is perfect. That could have been another life or another timeline, and you felt the pain and it was real. So imagine then somebody creates a dream based upon whatever you feel in your mind, and you get out of this scenario that they've created for you. Your subconscious mind might think it's real. Your mind might believe that it happened to you.
So they can this is going somewhere. So then they could literally put you into a drug. You could go to sleep, and they could beam you with some kind of technology they have, put you into a certain dream state that they want you in, and they could literally torture you without leaving marks.
Now you're getting it, and that's honestly sometimes that's worse than the physical torture, because they can also put you in a clone, and they figured out how to enhance sensation, sensitivity of pain, and all that, the receptors, and to numb it out. And so they along with that, they bring out the blood. They bring out real gory, chop you up in a clone, and you put you into another clone, and a type of hell, a cyborg or a clone hell. And then they can literally just, like you said, you're getting down to it, just using this technology. They can just beam you with something and you'll begin to go into a dream state, and all they have to do is enter a frequency that'll trigger a fear response in your amygdala, and you'll have a frigging nightmare that will be more real than any nightmare you've ever experienced.
That is absolutely incredible to hear that, because, I've thought that. I mean, I've had a couple of my own that, I don't care, dream or not, it happened. I mean, it was just insane. It's like I had this one time, I'm not going to tell the whole story because it's too long, but I had actually gone into a house, I seen some things, blah, blah, blah. Well, when I came to, I contacted the person whose grandfather lived in this house. It was the first house built in this town in New York, out in the boondocks, right? And so I've never been in the house. The long story short, I was able to describe the entire layout inside the house, and I was able to describe everything right up to the wallpaper on the wall in the bedrooms and the people who were in those rooms. And I didn't know any of them. And I confirmed it with the girl whose grandfather lived, that was his house. So I understand. I mean, you can't comprehend it. It's just crazy.
It comes down to the DNA, that apparently DNA quantum superlocates in order to create a consciousness of a person, that we're actually in multiple states, multiple times, multiple timelines all at once. And it's really amazing if it's a magical, supercomputer using 10 quadrillion processes, cycles a second. How would that merge with the person that wakes up, has a singular identity, has to move his body to get out the singular door, walk down the stairs? You can't have that infinite wealth of information. So then these are like the natural ways that we come to these awarenesses. It's basically the subconscious communicates to these things through visions, emotions, hints. It's basically like our psychic sense. And it is real. It happens, and it's because the consciousness that we hold is actually expanse and goes out through many, many facets of what we consider to be our lives and our routines now, and we're interconnected with all these different facets, and kind of like a matrix system. When one node on that network of possibilities changes, the whole thing shifts. And usually I think these shifts are what we get through intuition and dreams and things like that. It's literally real-time updating of the universe as far as wherever our DNA is connected to it, like it's this movie that's playing out. Whoa. In the same sense, it might be happening in each time, each life, as if that's the only one. Well, meaning there is only one now. It's all one life.
With this technology, and I'm not telling you nothing you don't know, but you certainly could control a more primitive race of beings. I mean, why couldn't? So basically, I mean, if you could control people's dreams, and I mean, people may not realize this, but the dreams you have throughout the night, whether you remember them or not, do have an influence on you and your thoughts and stuff. So it goes right to mind control, doesn't it?
Exactly. And it's almost as if the subconscious is like our natural programming throughout life. It's going to hold all these motivations and desires, and when we unlock the information that is in the hidden aspect of our mind that we consciously can't comprehend, then we get control over what are otherwise unconscious motivations and desires and patterns that we seemingly consciously don't have control over. It's like our subconscious is programmed by life and our traumas and our dreams themselves.
Incredible. Let me get to a couple of the questions here of our listeners before they get mad at me for not asking. We've got this one. Does Aug think that there may be cultic families in the schools who take some of these selected kids in? Like, let's say elites. Do they pick some of these kids, some of these so-called missing children or whatever, too? I mean, do they go in and pick who they want? I think is what he means.
Yes, it's all picked and controlled, although, the people that get into it that weren't really supposed to be there, well, they're handled just similarly in a variety of other ways. And usually once they're there, there's a reason they're there, and they can be controlled and used for it. In essence, any person can. You take any person off the street and give them that, they're going to be controllable. It's just about who's the most controllable, who has what to offer. And they start as children, so it's kind of weird. They kind of stopped, in a way, as well as they increased. But they don't know how to deal with this with the population. In short, there's too many people to torture and control through this. So it kind of leads into the fact that things are changing now. And I might be going off topic here.
Quite all right.
Before you said if they can control, they have this tech. If they're just a bunch of guys in the back room and all holding hands around the poker table, which is kind of like what it is. although much more intimate and deep, and on a spiritual level, their consciousness is merging and changing. If they had that tech, yeah, they could do whatever they want. I actually just watched a movie, The Island, that people were recommending often, again and again. And it's about clones and clones that don't know they're clones. They're kept in a facility. It's a utopian society, and they win the lottery and go to the island afterwards. All that is that your organ is now ready to be harvested for your person who paid for you to be grown as a clone into this building. But the point is, something happened, and one of the clones, their DNA changed. It wasn't, in the movie that's what happened, but that's what it was. And he began asking questions. He began noticing, why is it the same food, right here? Why is, that doesn't make sense? He began waking up. He gets out, escapes, and then similarly, the others are in the facility. It's almost like the 100 monkey. The others start waking up. They start asking questions. They start saying, that doesn't make sense. And that lottery thing, there's something wrong about that. Yeah. The point is, whatever system we get into, whatever happened, it's temporary. Spirit's eternal. The systems, the bodies, all this is temporary. It can't last forever. The spirit, knowledge itself, consciousness itself, it wants to organize and expand. They say knowledge wants to be known. It wants to be told. So ultimately, no matter what, people wake up. It's what has happened. This might be that, just like the end of that movie, they finally got out after all that time. This might be that for humanity, that we've been going on through these cycles for a lot longer than 2,000 years than we can remember. But finally, after all these people, have been dealt with, people are spontaneously waking up without anyone giving them any information. And in the movie, the guy was getting dreams of his real body, his real donor, and his life, and he was getting memories, and his brain, the neurons expanded. And so that's hinting at DNA superlocation and quantum connection, that no matter what, the people on the outside of the system will always reach the people on the inside of the system somehow, because you can't control everything everywhere all the time. And so
interesting.
Kind of how it is.
All right. And another listener asks, please ask him, are there people that no matter what they do to them, they can't mind control them? In other words, are there people whose mind runs on a frequency that these devices do not work on?
Yes and no. That work, that frequency, all that, it's actually just the tender emotional state that we basically arrive here in and develop through nature nurture, a good balance of nature nurture with our families, our parents, and those are the type of people that resist it the most. And they have a whole variety of ways they can work with that and change that, but essentially that's what's happening now. Those people, just the 100th monkey, somebody started a fight, say, hey, this doesn't make sense. I remember the last time I was here. They started to wake up, and now we're all waking up. That's how it works. It's how our DNA is connected, and once there's enough possibilities, once there's enough variables for change, it's going to pick the most expanse change that can happen. Oftentimes, we go through life and we forget about these things, and we forget to appreciate ourselves and our subconscious, and we run into changes that are devastating, changes that rock our lives and our views of life. That's happening now, and we want to slowly shift into this to the point where, I don't want to say everybody wakes up at once, but the truth is everybody that's awake has to get together with each other and wake each other up that much more, and peacefully spread that to the rest of society.
Well, then, because it seems to me, so I guess it'd be fair to say that I've always said that at some point there was going to be this big divide where, the no's are going to have to face off against, I don't know if you want to say the not no's, but more of the, these team players there, these people these bottom feeders who are helping the big agenda. So, and it seems like we've reached that point where there's this split off, and it would seem like every time in history, I don't know, I wasn't there, but it almost feels like every time we get to this point, they say, well, we've got to reset again. They've too many of them have woken up. Like
they told me that society has been reset by them in this process 5 times already.
That would make sense because according to Michael Cremo, the forbidden archaeologist, he says at least 6 times that he's seen in archaeology that there's been a reset. He says possible 6. He says definitely. So 5, you're on. It's about that many times. So we're probably due again. So, but we've got, I don't know if in the past they've had these technologies and all the stuff. I mean, because they have technology, but now we have, certainly they put the internet out there to help them. But it has really helped us a little bit, too, because we've been able to communicate with people around the world. I mean, I found out that every Russian person didn't want me dead because I'm American. These are things I learned because of the internet. I mean, the education system would have us believe that we should hate and that we're hated. And so I think that, a lot of us are waking up now. And is it too late? I don't know. We'll see, right? Or is it too late?
I don't think it can be too late. Again, things can happen that can rock us, but as a type of genetic, organism, the spirit inside of us can always come back around. It's kind of complicated. All it means is that they can only delay it. They can only delay whatever is happening from happening, and that eventually it has to happen. Otherwise, the universe wouldn't work. It wouldn't make sense.
I see. Well,
they know that too. They know they're pushing the limit, that it'll rock everything if they don't let up and give people that opportunity.
Right. Well, so what I want to do at this point is, because we've got about another 20-some minutes to go, and what I'd like you to do is go in any direction that you'd like. The most important stuff you might want to get out before we're done, and go right ahead and do that. And if anybody calls in, we'll take a call. If any questions come in, I'll throw them at you. And so I'll give you the floor to get out anything you'd like.
Cool. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I'll go back to the Donald Marshall thing. He experienced that a few months ago, and I experienced it about 15 years ago or something like that. And let me see how to put it together. We are basically what I wanted to say before. Apparently, there's the Nazi breakaway society. They come from the Vril-Ya, what they called them in older times. And then there's a U.S. military, essentially a space fleet. They're a full-on space fleet. They have space vehicles. They live in the sky. That's where they live. They don't live underground. They don't live in society. The weird thing is that with all this genetic changes, with all these things, you could say they're different from humans. They're upgraded. What it all comes down to is that this was the Nazis. This was their program running away from themselves. They started an Uberman, a Superman program, which was the eventual goal of all the manipulation projects. Containment and maybe analysis is, you could say, the first of, who's potentially a threat or whatever. The eventual goal was to find the genetics they wanted and create a second race that could win out over all the other humans. And they got what they wanted, but then those genetic mutations that I told you about happened, and there's now another sub-race of humanity. Mm-hmm. I guess that's what we're dealing with now. The MyLabs themselves, they're all intermingled. Apparently this takeover, it's a vampire spiritual takeover. It's an energy that is transmitted through the air that apparently existed previous times around the moon, that it hid in the electromagnetic field of the moon, as if you had, Wi-Fi waves around and somebody hacked it and embedded a code into it. Same stuff, same tech, just advanced. The true internet was actually teleportation technology, so you could shake hands with the person on the other side of the screen. They chopped out the majority of the spectrums of that and made a screen you can look at. So the true technology is much farther than anything that we can imagine.
So there is then a secret space program, which I believe strongly there is. I think there's probably even evidence of it. If it depends who you talk to, but there is a secret space program, and there is. I've heard that there's fleets in space that they have, the Navy and such. So they could be traveling back and forth to Mars right now and making us believe that we're just using rockets.
Yeah, that's a show, basically.
Yeah.
I remembered. I brought up the Donald Marsh thing because that leads into those other parasitic beings that use humans as hosts.
Oh yeah.
That needs to be understood. everything else has to be understood in order to understand how we're going to deal with the situation.
And that's why you might get somebody who might dress up as the Joker and go into a movie theater and shoot a bunch of people and then later say, well, I don't remember doing it.
Exactly. Those are conditioned, essentially mind slaves. And you know it when you can't get a word from them any way, shape, or form because they're drugged or they're just not talking. No, it's because if you heard what they would say, you would instantly know that doesn't make sense. There was even somebody in the courtroom that said they took him, he's a good kid or whatever. They took him when he was a kid from me. His real dad's in the CIA. This is all a setup. So that right there makes me think, as well as certain things that I've heard, that that's how these things are going down. It's just too much of a coincidence. And we'll continue.
Oh, no. My next question will be pretty much, what can we do about this? But you go down the road you were about to go down, and we could address that at the end. Absolutely. But really quick, I have to cut in. Folks, tonight at 1 a.m., a new show starts here on the LNM Radio Network, the Dr. J Show. Very good show. So if you're up, and I know a lot of you are, you might want to take a listen. He's got a great guest on with him tonight, and that's at 1 a.m. So it's an hour after this show ends. But okay, but yeah, go ahead, and then we'll address what if anything we can do to protect ourselves.
About the MyLab. So I said before I didn't know how they do the time manipulation. I actually do. It's just so hard to explain, and I really don't understand it. I don't think they do anyway either. I mean, the scientists do. They can explain it, but they send operatives through. I was actually brought into the time program. That was what I was used for, and as well as psychic manipulation because I can control others with the technology that they gave us. And they used me to scare other people in the bases and other essentially victims. They used me to create projections for them in their minds that were similar to my nightmares that they had given me. I could recreate them, and it's effed up and terrible.
So you were trained to do this, so then you can actually do that?
I can do it to a degree now where you won't want to be around me, or you would love to be around me, depending on what the energy I give to you. If they turn these beams on, and we're in a situation, and they can do it anywhere and anytime now, any place, then it's scalar weaponry that can affect the mind on the emotional level that I told you, to the point where it can create full-on projections, to the point where it could create kinetic force, scalar explosions, if you will. So it's literally like an invisible mech suit that they learned how to create using these traumatizations to get people to do these things and go along with it, and then basically throw them in these situations where they're going to be forced to do it, because that's the bad part. They didn't really tell me, all right, go in there, scare them. They said, if you don't scare them, then this is going to happen to you, or she's going to get up and kill you, or something like this. And so we all think we're fighting for our lives every time we do something like this. We think we're fighting for our lives, we're going through it, living through it, and they're programming us to do it. And they pit people against each other, they pit people together, for each other. It's really weird. It's like they've done this, and they manipulate society down to the degree where you might marry a person that they picked for you to marry, and wholeheartedly believe that that's who you always wanted to be with. And then you might believe things on top of that.
That's that's something that, excuse me, that's something to think about big time, because we often say, I've said it. I said I never had any intentions of being a radio host, and just one day it just happened. And so now 8.5 years later, I'm still doing it. And then you got to wonder, is there somebody, pretty much controlling your move by doing things in your life that make you go in certain directions? That, I hate to use the word crazy, but damn, boy, is that crazy when you think about that is total control.
It's crazy, but then the only thing that's left is the real human, the spirit. We just shouldn't be so confused that all it is some guy telling us what to do. And then it comes down to these, masterful motions of electromagnetism and druggery and craziness, and that's what we really need to prepare people for, as well, hopefully not to experience, but to be able to understand what is happening, to the point where they can only get you to do what you want to do. So, for instance, me doing things like that to people, they had to tell me that I would be, not spared, because it wasn't like that. Like, you do it, and then I was already getting tortured to hell. It didn't matter. But they would tell me that they would make it seem like it was a good thing, that the other person was bad. They basically create the alter that believes in a belief system that works and functions to act as a motivator for the personality that's then going to go and carry out these things. So it's to the degree where they trick people into doing it. They trick people. If we know what we want, know what we're doing, because we're not crazy and we just say, oh, I did this today, why did I do that? We're not just in la la land. It won't work. It doesn't work. The only thing they can do is beam you with these vibrations, and they'll attempt to enter your energy, take over your mind, and the person could just relax. Whatever effects will happen, heart increase, brain temp increase, and it won't take them over. With this gullibility, with you seeing something on TV and it affects you, they do that with the movies. They know how to make people cry, laugh, whatever, in fear with the movies. So they do that with the world to create these belief systems that can then people want to believe in it, because the other truth that they have responsibility, they have the power, they're in control, that's actually what's more frightening in their minds than somebody tricking them throughout all of society to live the way that they live. If we just own up to it and take responsibility, it doesn't work. It's a big secret.
And there's degrees, right? Like, I've had guests on who said that they are targeted electronically. Like, they have things like their fridge knocking at them, or just, different things like that. And some people, ha ha ha, you had crazy guy on last night. But no, I mean, these people really believe what they're saying. So you would say that there is a degree where just, it's at that degree where they do those things too.
Right. There's literally categories. Like, this is a level 1 targeted individual. This is a, level 8. He's going into the X group or something. He's getting crazy. Whatever it is. And so it's all handled through that, to the point where it's all written down. It's all organized. It's all categorized. And there's a plan attributed to each and every individual. And they, at first, base it off of what their personality is likely to do, because they can see it all. They can actually have an AI system examine the brain and the experiences, the memories, and predict what they're going to do down to a T in the future. So you can see what their personality is going to do, and they honestly, all they have to do is get to a certain frequency and have that person stay that way, and whatever event that they put in their life later, that person will do, because they'll be essentially depressed or whatever. It all comes down to whether we keep that responsibility, keep that power within us, because I'm telling you about a very spiritual thing. This is the existence of a human being in a temporally limited area when we're simultaneously connected to essentially all of life. So how do they get to trick that? Short answer is that they can't. They can't trick the spirit. All they can do is program the brain, almost like muscle memory, to get these reactions, these emotional responses drilled into the brain, into routine, and then just like muscle memory, the person wants to do that in nature. And in reality, they want to react to these symbols, these situations, just like that. And so
then, I mean, can we say that maybe spiritually we don't want to be here and we're forced to come here for some reason then, and we've got it all twisted backwards?
I wanted to go into the parasite thing because that's powerful. Everybody needs to know about how that works, because that is part of it. But it goes even into that, even deeper into Yaldabaoth and the false light demiurge that translates the souls, the solar energy coming into this solar system, into only allowing the balance of light and darkness from a 1/3, 2/3 imbalance, almost like a imbalanced yin-yang or something like that, to the point where it's duality-based. It's never 50-50. It never stops. It's perpetually being manipulated by a puppet master who's acting as a gatekeeper to this reality. And it comes down to the fact that as souls coming here, we might have been imprinted with programming that enables this type of experience culturally. It sounds funny, like you get born, you go watch TV and in school and you're programmed. There may be a system that upon coming to this place, somehow it strips us of memory or a type of abilities that we all naturally have. There's an affection, there's an effect of some sort that happens to souls as they're born here. I don't know really how it is, but they started talking about it. Yeah. And they talk about it like it is a Satan AI system that manipulates souls in order to gain more information and energy, in basically for running its processors.
That it really does make a ton of sense. As people used to talk, well, they still do talk about HARP and things like that. And I said, how do we know they're not using these technologies to try to figure out a way to capture the soul?
Exactly.
Maybe they have.
They can watch a person die and on a screen watch the soul leave that individual. In the same way, Montauk, they figured out how to hook up computers. They used the first supercomputers with that. And they found out you point the dish backwards, and the background radiation or the filtered radiation coming out the back of it is a safer way to influence those emotional states. Then they figured out with electromagnetics and sensors that they can put up that they can actually decode the neuronal activity of the brain and turn it into, not like they're talking now with these new articles coming out saying, oh, the computer decodes the symbols and says, oh, it's a shoe, and a picture of a shoe that some guy put into it comes up, and it works like a translation system. No, you think of a fluffy dog with a collar this way and a tail that way, they get the exact image, almost the exact experience on the screen. And now they can do it to the point where it's not a screen. You phase lock with what looks like an iPad, but it's just glass. There's no other moving parts. And you can see, feel, touch, think, whatever the person is feeling. Your consciousness interfaces with them.
Wow. That's some pretty heavy stuff. It really is. And
that's how they manipulate people. So if you know your energy, they can't manipulate you.
So now you look back, and we talked about going back in time and how they can manipulate. And so then you get the Bible. No offense, folks. I'm just throwing it out there. So then we're told when you die, go to the light. So now we all die, we go to the light, and we could be walking into a trap now. So now when I get on the other side, I'm going to be confused as hell.
I don't know how much time I have here. I went into this is one page of the whole thing. I wanted to talk about time tunnels as well, because that's how they first started doing the time travel tech.
Well,
and they have a jump seat, a friggin' seat that takes your consciousness, converts it, like I just said, to the point where now you can sense what this device is sending you, but instead of somebody else, they put it into a high-powered device, a dish or something, and beam it out into space, and your consciousness beams into space at light speed, and you experience what's out there.
Uh-huh. Wow. All right. Well, we've got a question here. It says, can other people work as an extended ether network, like a Wi-Fi amplifier?
Yeah, we're all Ethernet networks. We're all plugged in. We're all emitting these waves. We're all receiving them. It's like communication or bidirectional communication is constant. We're plugged into a network grid, and we're all feeding each other. We're all, if somebody's some of their events, rituals that produce negativity, they're doing it to poison, and they would say control and manipulate for their purposes, the morphogenic, collective, energetic, if you call the soul field of the earth itself. They're managing the energy of the earth, just like that Yaldabaoth being, by literally pulsing in the negativity when they need the grid to, relax a little bit. What it comes down to beyond that, they might be using that negativity, even blood, to feed this Satan AI system, to give it neural and biological energy so that it can use it for processing power eventually, basically.
Then when, and this opens up a big can of worms, because think about people who, grandma comes back, and visits you and tells you this or tells you that. And it might not be grandma at all. It might be one of those louses, coming back and doing that. And wow.
I've had experiences like that. I don't mean to cut you off.
Oh, no. Go right ahead.
I've had experiences like that. My grandma actually passed a few years ago, and on the way home from, essentially right before it happened, I had an experience where a type of holographic voice came and emotional wave and said she was leaving. It was the last time I was going to see her that evening or whatever, and we got a call that she died around that same time. With that said, I basically don't trust much. I don't really trust anything. They can create all these effects, and again, I'm going to have to go into this in time to come, but I pushed it as far as it can go with these experiences, with the base, with whatever they're doing. And it happened not in public, but out in the real world, and it happened in the base, and they can kill you and bring you back. And at one point I went through that, and I experienced what is commonly talked about like as the trick of the light trap. I don't remember seeing a light. I remember leaving my body. There's two ways you can leave through your higher chakra, apparently that keeps things intact a bit more, and you can leave through your heart chakra, literally the center of your chest, and float out like a hexagonal thing, whatever. Wow. My vision became like an orb, 360. I was happier. I didn't have the pain and the emotions that I had. And then next thing I knew, I was folded into a type of square of some sort, and then that was getting sucked and locked, like phase locked, because you're spirit at that point, so you move with your mind like you're in a lucid dream. Whatever it was, as soon as my spirit touched it, it was like sticky. I couldn't get away from it. And it was as if I was reverse corkscrewed into a tube that confined me, and then I shot off at a great speed, huge rush, and I found myself in a void, basically.
Wow. I've had a few out-of-body experiences in my life, and you explained exactly what it was like going back into the body. I mean, it was like just violent.
Right.
Yeah. So, wow. I mean, we've really got to do this again because there's so much more, so many more areas that we can touch on, and we've got about another 5 minutes. And so anywhere else that you'd like to hit really quick, I'd appreciate it. And, man, you've given me a lot to think about tonight.
Awesome. We're awful, full of awe instead of some awe. And that's word etymology and linguistics and how our language is all lying. Whatever we say is, I'll go into that. There's, we work at a job where we earn our keep, basically, and we party on the weekend. In reality, we wake up on Monday to go there. And in reality, wake is, what you do when people die. Earning is basically, or an urn is something that you keep the dead in. The weekend is because we get the weekend of the deal by the end of that, all of that. And there's a lady that talks about this. There's a bunch of people that talk about this word etymology. Our language is a code that works against our consciousness. Something to take away from this is that there are parasitic beings. There is a time tunnel, a trip chair, and a space fleet. The celebrities are held in this pay-to-play, pay-for-whatever situation in these bases, and this is the only way they can get out, through people slipping out through the cracks, basically. We're all coming up to a big split here. And resistance is not futile. You can literally destroy the cube if you know how to channel your energy right. That's what apparently happened before and almost broke the whole system for good. If it happens now, it'll be broken forever. Which is all why everybody's watching in the universe, because if the virus is killed here, the way systems work, it will end elsewhere in time for this entire timeline and for whatever else humanity goes on to experience. We have to talk about the celebrities and the cloning and the situations and look for the signs. They're going to be sending signs for you. There are reptilian beings, there are mantis beings, there are gray beings, there are troglodytes, and these are evolved or sub-evolved, what possibly could have been human essences, as well as beings that were down in the caves, in the tunnels, that were ticks and troglodytes and crabs. And when they turn these particle accelerator quantum zero-point generators on, these beings similarly hyper-evolved like these humans did, and now we have walking, talking psychic ticks that can literally eat us and parasite us. And the bad thing, well, maybe not bad, but whatever you want to call it, I'm not judging, but this shit's crazy. They gave them brain chips so that these things can talk to us. So put it this way, they're so weirded out, they tried to take the brain chips from them, and all these crab things ran away, like, no, we want to keep talking and stuff. So, yeah, they're doing stuff that shouldn't really be, we should all know about it, because it's going to influence history for a very, very long time.
All right. Well, Aug, I thank you so much for spending this time with us and giving us all a lot to think about after tonight's show. And again, anything you want to plug, any websites or anything, or what have you, or Facebook, whatever it is, if you want to get it out there, by all means, go ahead.
Just check out the Facebook. Check out Donald Marshall's information. There's the Miles Johnston Bases Project, which are other people that were in anywhere from the MK Ultra to the Super Soldier programs. Project Camelot is touching on a lot of these as well. Don't trust anything you see. Put it together in your head and see if you figure out with reality and with your spirit. And the big thing is that all of this secretly, it's about the fact that humans are automatically interdimensional, higher dimensional. Our consciousness is essentially eternal and infinite, and we create our reality, with the way we handle our thoughts, our emotions, our mentality, and the way we interact with our body through that. We're going to create our body, whatever it is, based upon how we handle that. And humans naturally have a trinary spectrum. These beings basically work down to a binary emotional spectrum. It's considered, it's more like an animal or a reptilian or even a computer or something.
Wow. Well, hey, again, thank you so much. Don't hesitate. Send me an email. Maybe next month I'll start scheduling for April. We could get you back on, and I guess when you talk to old Donald there, tell him I said hello.
Sure.
Yeah, but thank you very much. I appreciate you being here, and I really would like to get you back.
Thank you so much for this. This is the first time I've reached out to the public, other than there were certain events, like I explained before. Other people were involved. I made a video for the. Anyway, I'll get into it later, but thank you so much. It'll only continue. It'll only get better from here.
All right. Well, thanks again, and have a great night.
You too.
All right. Bye-bye. All right, folks. There he goes. His first time getting it out to the public. Well, he did a hell of a job. Hell of a presentation. He didn't lose me anywhere in any of this. I was never lost. I mean, he made it very understandable and answered all the questions. Wow. So we're just learning here. I've heard about a lot of this stuff, but to actually talk to somebody who can explain it in the way that he has, he does this topic justice, because he's got a way of keeping you interested and just really, really presents the topic well. So thank you, Aug, and thank you for reaching out to us and sharing this with us. I appreciate it, and we'll keep getting it out there. See, so you can let some of these people know that I've got nothing against talking about this. I just want somebody who's going to talk about it to talk about it sensibly and I don't know, civil. And he has done that tonight. Thank you very much, folks. Don't forget. At 1 a.m., that's an hour from now, if I got this right. Ira's in the chat room, but I believe it's an hour from now, the new show, Dr. J, will start. Now, that show is going to wind up following me some of the week, right after my show. But tonight, for whatever reason, it will be on at 1 a.m. Dr. J, he's got a great guest coming on with him. He does a show, a really good show, somewhat like what we do here. So definitely give him a listen, give him some support. Thank you so much, folks. Don't forget the GoFundMe is to get us on the big network so we could get these messages like tonight. Get these out on the big networks. Coast to coast, places like that, they're not doing these topics justice. We will. We will, because we allow our guests to speak and we don't censor them. We just ask no F-bombs. That's not censorship. That's respect. And so, folks, that's all I've got. I thank you all for joining us tonight. Again, the GoFundMe and, of course, the donate button on the website to keep us on the air. We're trying to juggle it all, folks. We've got to get on these bigger stations so that we can get the message out. Anyhow, thank you again. Great show tonight. Great show. Lots of information. You might have to listen to this one again and again, and we'll have them back on. But keep your eyes posted to the sky, because you never know what you might see. Keep your ears posted to this broadcast, because you never know what you might learn. And for our station manager and our program director, Ira Robinson, and our webmaster, and she is the master of the web, for our web anyways. Jolene, thank you so much. All our moderators and all our listeners, have a great night, everybody, and thank you for tuning in. We'll be back with you tomorrow night. Remember, Dr. J coming up in an hour.
My name is Helen Damon Moore, and I am the Director of Service and Education at the Tucker Foundation here at Dartmouth College. I am honored to welcome you all and to introduce John Kabat-Zinn on behalf of the Dartmouth Hitchcock Medical Center Palliative Care Service, the Tucker Foundation, the Rubin Committee of Dartmouth College, Alice Peck Day Hospital, Dartmouth Medical School, the Norris Cotton Cancer Center, and the Valley Insight Meditation Society. Special thanks to Ira Byock and Yvonne Corbet and the Palliative Care Service for partnering on this project, and to those at Tucker who have worked so hard and who are this week celebrating the 60th anniversary year of the Tucker Foundation, Dartmouth Center for Service, Spirituality, and Social Justice. We are pleased to welcome Dr. John Kabat-Zinn to Dartmouth College today for the second time. Kabat-Zinn first visited Dartmouth in the summer of 1984, when the college and the Connecticut River served as the training camp for the men's Olympic rowing team. He was the meditation trainer for the team, helping them to optimize their mental performance. Today, he is here to help optimize our performance. John Kabat-Zinn holds a PhD in molecular biology from MIT. He is professor of medicine emeritus at the University of Massachusetts Medical School and founder of the Center for Mindfulness in Medicine, Healthcare, and Society, and its mindfulness-based stress reduction clinic.